Can you guys hear the wind howling? Okay, stop it. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Dungeons and Decrees. My name's Adrian,
And I'm Alex.
and today we have a special guest, Dylan Baird, aka Bardic Geek. We just played a session of World of Spheres, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it, what we thought. It's going to be a very different episode, but I'm here for it. We're diversifying our portfolio,
Do
essentially.
you want to let him say hi?
Hello, everybody.
I'm having a bad what's it called? Like a bit of a delay, to be honest, on everybody right now. Like
Oh,
people's mouths are moving, and then I hear
Got
it.
it.
So I see what's supposed to go on, but then I'm like, oh, but I don't hear the cue because I'm usually just looking at myself, seeing if I look like an idiot or not.
Well, hopefully this will not be like video recorded and it'll just go out in podcast format, I hope, right?
Well, I mean, even if it was messed up, I can still um, edit everything visually to the minute. To
Nice.
the, I it's all good. I know my shit. I know enough shit. I don't know all the shit. If anyone wants to teach me, that's great. Anyways, we're not here for that. We're
Fair.
here to talk about World of Spheres.
Indeed. A passion project that I kind of started in undergrad and then wrote, oddly enough, more overcomplicated mechanics for back then. This was 2007. And then forgot about until I got really spiteful in 2022. Spelljammer came out. It was pretty racist, and D&D then did the OGL and all of the other horrible things. And so I just quit playing D&D altogether and wrote my own system.
The greatest way to just do something is out of spite, you know?
Yes. It's honestly the
Uh,
motivation I needed.
a real force to reckon with.
All right.
okay. So what inspired you in college to start thinking about your World of Spheres?
It was kind of a weird obsession with two different JRPGs. I thought the materia system in Final Fantasy VII was cool, but needed more to it. And Alice, who was my DM through all of college, she had cobbled together a version of D20 Modern and added her own systems for like the Final Fantasy VII materia and how it would work instead of spellcasting in D20 Modern, and it was kind of brilliant. I don't know if she even still has it anymore, but that was a great start, and I thought that felt like a lot of fun just to be able to have. And then I don't know if you're familiar with the Tales of Symphonia. It is an old JRPG that was on GameCube, and then the PlayStation got a port, and then it got several re-releases and remasterings over the years. But characters in it were all pretty normal people in a JRPG, but then there's this item called an X-Sphere, which is a crystal made out of dead people, but let's not talk about that. And it gives you superhuman strength. So that the main character is able to survive all of these ridiculous things as a 15-year-old, like most JRPG protagonists. But he gets roped into a quest to save the world because he happens to have a unique one on him. And just literally follows someone who's supposed to be like a reincarnation of an angel as they're reactivating temple sites all across the world. And I thought, oh, you add a crystal to a character and it gives them powers. Well, that's kind of cool. What if I did something like that and the materia concept? So it mulled for 15-ish years until I was like, okay, I finally have enough pieces in my head together of like, I want spheres to give a static bonus, but also be able to unlock technique spells that the deity that it came from knew. And like, but I also wanted creative mode magic, so I had to write a system of like, if you are a fire mage, it is not just fireball, firebolt, wall of fire. It's, well, it'd be better if I had a cone attack here. I don't have one, so I'm just going to try and control my ability enough to make this into a cone attack. And you can reshape things from there. So I effectively like redid multiple systems of magic to build out what I wanted to see in the TTRPG space.
And I really do like that aspect of it, that it's completely customizable.
Yes.
Because I mean, you could go in with like half an idea and a wish, and all the things like work out in really weird ways. I wish we got to play longer, because I know if you played in a longer campaign, a lot of these other talents and these skills and techniques would actually come through.
Yes.
But even in the short play, like I could see the longevity of how interesting a character would be, right? Because I think in D&D, like I choose one trope of a character, and then I can sort of backbend and fix it there and like make that work. But here you get to flesh out a lot more of that up front. Or if you play it like I do, like I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of shit together and just see what happens from there. Which, you know, you could. It would work. And I don't necessarily have to worry about like the thing I worry about when playing Dungeons and Dragons is that everybody knows all of the different versions of how to play a fucking character, and they're like, oh, it's a fucking mega death trap warlock, but I don't know. Yep. And I'm like, I don't those were a bunch of words that made no sense to anyone but me.
Well, to that point, when I still played D&D, I've had 2 warlocks. Neither of them have had Eldritch Blast. And I say that, and immediately everyone that's ever played a warlock is like, but you're missing out on like so much damage potential. And I pause and go, that's not why I play a character. I'm playing an interesting story that happens to have combat mechanics attached to it. And I wanted there to be more of that in. So that's why it is a classless system. You build a character ground up. You select exactly what their attributes are. And then you have the customization points. So if you want a really highly skilled character at creation, just buy more skills. If you want to have more raw potential, increase your attributes or your tier. If you want to have a bunch of like weird connections and background criminal enterprises that you work with, the contact trait lets you have that I know a guy feature, and you can just tag that whenever you need it. So yeah, it's I wanted people to make what they wanted to see in a game that other systems mechanically weren't built to work around.
Yeah. And it definitely like shows through that. And it doesn't feel like I had to roll really well in order to get like a really fun character. Everyone is limited by their own creativity. And like how many flaws do you want to have?
Yes.
Which once again, that's fun to play with too.
Yeah, throwing the flaw of allergies on there, I did only because there are friends of mine that come spring cannot go outdoors without suffering, and I thought to myself, well, that needs to be represented in game. So yeah, roll a d12 on a 1, 2, or 3, you just take a -1 to everything. It's just a bad day.
And you could play just like a sickly Victorian child and like just have your best life.
Sickly is in fact a flaw. It's on the list.
I know some people like that. It's fine.
Yeah.
And no shame to the chronically ill. It's just they're not chronically ill. They're not. They're just.
And they could put the points to do other things. Chronically ill might result in someone that just uses all of the spells and gets around by magic overcoming.
What an interesting. That was immediately guess. Now nobody else is probably going to care about this, but can you please talk about how you built this spreadsheet? Because it's a masterclass in spreadsheets.
It's a Google sheet. If you go ahead and the 3 bars next to like the character sheet where it says all sheets and click on that, you'll see one called programming. And that's hidden in everybody's sheet, but effectively the way it works is and ignore like the first bit and all of these buttons. Those are actually broken. Scroll all the way to the right and you'll see these attribute lookup tables. Basically, it's a point-buy system that's a 1 through 5 for almost everything, and 0 applies to skills because sometimes you don't invest in a skill. I did everything in a VLOOKUP, so if you have a 1 in a stat, that is a D4 that you would roll in that pool. Same with your tier. And so those, whenever you adjust the 1, it looks up against this table that's hidden in the background of the sheet and then swaps out the D4 to a D6 if you have 2 in it. D8 is 3, D10 is 4, D12 is 5. Technically, there are ways to go up to 7, which would then be a D12 plus a D3, which is, of course, a cut in half D6, and a D12 plus a D6. And that's only for attributes, but that's like we've been playing for 2 years kind of power levels. And so all of it's VLOOKUP for the most part. And it basically is just like you create a reference point, and then you tell it in the programming, when you see X, replace with Y here. And that's where I put all the dice bits. So whenever anything updates, it references to that, or it references to another page that references somewhere else. So like all of the defenses on the character sheet, block, when it's looking up the skill die, it's looking up what the skill die is for your character's melee weapon skill, because you'd block with a weapon. For dodge, it's looking at your gymnastics. And I didn't bring this up during character creation, but gymnastics is your dodge ability. Fortitude is boosted by your athletics. So your character's physical health is represented on a skill that they train to resist things like poison and disease. Esotery is actually your magic attack bonus, but awareness is your magical defense. Your perception of the magical world and your ability to like recognize things that are going on is what lets you shrug off mental domination and stuff like that. But then empathy is your social defense. So whenever you up those, and you can play around with the sheet here, it'll change the numbers throughout the whole thing. So all of these update for you. It keeps what is a very complicated system with lots of fiddly bits to be as minimally fiddly as possible. Because, like, I like how changing your character's attributes adjusts their attack rolls automatically, or increasing their skills gives you more opportunities, but then adds in the static bonus or the ability to put in more effort to add an extra d6 to your dice pool. And with that, I wanted it to represent itself without you having to like look up different pages, different charts, different tables. So this is something where if I publish this kind of a game, it has to then come with probably a mountain of supplemental online resources that would be free and available for anybody. But I'm also adding on things like I would probably read the book cover to cover so that people with vision impairments would be able to like just click on a chapter and have it start reading itself to you, with the best descriptions I could to explain things. Because I think there's not enough disability resources that support people with, you know, anything that needs another way around it. So I would be incorporating all that. Plus, like my day job, I audio record my own training content anyway, so it's not like I'm not able to use the software anyway. I already have that skill set, so I would work around that.
Yeah, this is incredible, and I think it's very late that we're talking about making things accessible, but not that there are not things like that already, but like I'm trying to put my words together. Give me a second.
Sure.
And then I didn't give myself a second. See, innate not working with our brain cognition, which was saying the same word twice. Cool. Thanks. Hold on. Alex is having a whole mental breakdown on this podcast right now. I think it's amazing that you're doing that. And creating this system already with the accessibility in mind. Because I think we're retroactively trying to fit things together, and it's very apparent that it's not fitting together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things where, like, it's why I also solicit feedback from a lot of people in the community. Penny, who you might know, Penny Lescroche, she put out a suggestion when looking over this sheet going, oh, the auto-highlighting for the techniques that you could get because you have the right skill points for them is great, but the highlighting for the red used to be a lot lighter. It was the automatic Google Sheets red highlighting, which if you look at it in grayscale, is indistinguishable from the green. And so she pointed out, like, hey, color blindness in red-green is the most common, is going to fail here. And I went, oh, crap, hold on. And then I reprogrammed the whole thing with maroon instead of the default light red. And then I changed the text from black to white so that the blocked one would have white text and a darker background, and the accessible one, if you have the skill points necessary, would be black text with a light shading. So it is visually distinctive if you go into black and white. And it's just asking the community. They will tell you what will make it better as long as you start with that in mind.
I didn't even think about that. And it makes sense.
At first, neither did I. And then I felt really bad about it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to fix this. Yeah. So.
Wow. I'm literally blown away. Because I thought it was cool, but the more we talk about it, the cooler it becomes.
I've put about 25 hours into the coding for this, so I appreciate the fact that it is appreciated. But yeah, for the people that in an audio medium, when you pick out your skill points, characters are able to select up to 5 techniques at character creation. And these 5 techniques are essentially like advanced applications of skills that would replace class skills or are like super abilities that are beyond what the normal person can do. And so there's a list of about 270-ish of the techniques and 175 spells that require you to be a certain level in schools of magic to do as well. So when you put in the points into the front of the sheet, secondary and third tabs will auto-highlight. If you have access to them, it's green. If it is outside of your ability, it's red. So that way, when you're looking at it, you can just narrow it down and only look at what really matters based on the skills that you've selected. But you could see the whole list if you feel like going through and modding stuff around, or decide with bonus points at the end, because you get 20 bonus points to tweak your character custom. You can be like, all right, well, I really want this technique, so I'm going to up this skill 2 more times and then buy this technique off of it, and go from there. But yeah, if I'm going to make something this complicated, I've got to make a way for me not to have to sit down with every single player for about an hour making their characters. Which is why I was like, let me find out how to put all the techniques on a sheet for me.
Yeah, and that's like kind of like the basis of all like starting new players into a new set. Like, hey man, I know this is unappealing as fuck, but we're gonna sit down and talk about rules for an hour.
Exactly, and it just didn't seem like it was going to be the easiest sell, especially because most people just want to play stuff they already know anyway.
Yeah.
And I get that. Familiarity is comfort, but trying new things can be interesting, and it can change the dynamic. And fighters having to use stamina to use their fighter abilities means that they'll eventually run out of swinging sword power.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, that's something most tabletop games really miss. Swinging weapons is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked about this off pod, but we'll be seeing you. I mean, I'm going to make it a point of seeing you in Gen Con.
Yes.
Would you run a game in person?
I'm planning on it, actually, or trying to anyway. And to make up for a lot of the complications and things, like if people don't have laptops or tablets, I'm going to have to figure out some way to simplify some of these things.
Yeah.
But the stamina, you know those like aquarium beads that are made of glass? You could put those in a little bowl, and that's your stamina pool.
That'd be so fun.
Yep. And you get stuff to clink with.
Yeah.
We were talking about the best part about this version of anything is that you get to have all the clacking you want.
Yes.
So I can add more dice, and more of my dice get used, and there is something just primal about that.
Yes.
And I love that.
And also, it's a system that I borrowed. So in Exalted, if you apply like an element in the narrative or in the scene and add it there, you can get a bonus die to add to your pool. The way that works in World of Spheres is you can add points forward and have environmental aspects counter it with points against. So basically you could have like 3 forward and 1 against. So let's say you are on the high ground, you have a reach weapon, and you're trying to hit somebody, and there's glare in their eyes. So that's the 3 forward. But it's also raining, so that's the 1 against. You would then have, it would even out to 2 in your favor, so you'd add a d6 based on that. So the number corresponds to the same die as before, which would be like, an attribute of 2 is a d6, so 2 forward is also a d6. And you just get to try and use every element of the scene. I want chewing the scenery. I want you to cut the chandelier and ride it to the rafters. Like, being able to make characters have dramatic and narrative moments because, the rules say, use that and it's a d6. Just, it encourages creativity and silliness.
Yeah, I like it. I liked it a lot. I felt like I knew exactly what kind of character I wanted to build. Like because there was no what's a class system where I had to figure out exactly what rules I was kind of looking into. I was just like, here's my idea. Now, I mean, with your assistance and also like reading through a lot of stuff, I was like, hey, how can I make this happen? And if you have time, it's a fun read. There's a little quips to like you said there was like a psych reference and like there's just little references within the techniques that were made. So it was really fun. And I didn't have to feel like I was okay, because I'm a barbarian, I can only do the X, Y, and Z. But now because it's more of a modified thing, it's like whatever you can do with what points you have, make it happen.
Exactly, yeah. One of the deviousness abilities is called "But You Have Heard of Me," and it's leaning on your character's deception. You plant a suspicion in their mind that you are famous or infamous, and can then make someone doubt that they have not, in fact, heard of you. So in the event that you're faking a bravado as a title of someone, or someone villainous, effectively they get a penalty of like, but have I heard of them? Shit, what if this person's actually dangerous? And then they immediately, it's a opportunity to mess with an NPC by like going, no, I'm important. You should know me. Yeah. And so,
But it also really lends itself to not necessarily having to be one type of game, right? I don't have all of these skills, so I can be a combat-based game. You could legitimately just have a role-playing game where you're trying to move through the world socially.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Versus fighting and killing people.
Yep. And that's why the social combat tracker is not a pass-fail. It's a sliding scale where you can start at neutral and then you have to get 3 victories to pull them over to friendly, or 3 failures and pulls them over to hostile. And it's like, it can end at any point depending on when someone decides to cut and run. But it creates a risk-reward, like, how do you approach the argument? The argument's not going in your favor. What's your desperation move? And there are skill techniques that are built around that into all of the social skills. And you can also just role play really well and, say exactly the kind of motivation you think that would get them. And that will give you the bonus to potentially succeed. So, yeah. Just making sure that there's rules that allow for people to have whatever approach they think their character would take in the world and let that carry the story.
How did you come up with the technique lists?
I started with just trying to figure out, like, a lot of it was borrowing ideas from things where it's like, I'll take a scene in a cartoon or movie or anime that was cool and go, well, what would I call that skill? How would I mechanize that? And then I would slowly build it out through that. And then I would reread them all and be like, well, this is horribly imbalanced. Let me try and fix this. And then correct it from there. But then when it came down to, hey, I need to start really actively playtesting this, I only have like 2 for this skill, but I have like 10 for combat. I went, all right, I have to balance these all out. Every single one needs the same amount at the same levels. Let me just start to finish, rewrite everything. And it was just my nights and weekends outside of work for a couple weeks, because I was, living in a different state. My spouse was down here, and so I had plenty of free time. And most of it was just taking inspiration from other things, reading other games and books and seeing what class abilities or features were unique to things and going, well, that doesn't quite work, but it inspires me to write this thing that's different and would work in my system. Part of it is inspiration, part of it's theft, and part of it's just finding something funny and deciding to name it that. So
Yeah, there's 270 of them.
Yeah.
That's wild.
there's a few, yeah, just a little bit. And a lot of it, like, I watched a lot of Animal Planet. So, like, for Fieldcraft, so many of it is just, verify specimen, gather nature's bounty, I know a shortcut, snare trap. Like, all of these abilities are things that you just watch the right people going through the wilderness, and you're like, yeah, I could totally type out all of this stuff. Yeah. So, yeah.
I can definitely see the, like, naked and afraid techniques in here.
Exactly. And most of it is just needing, a couple and deciding, like, I play a lot of rogues. So when it came to the thief one for subterfuge, I was like, oh, I've got all of these things because I've watched, like, professional pickpockets working so that I could get an understanding of it. Percussive pickpocketing is you intentionally bump into somebody to create a distraction, and that reduces their ability to perceive you in their pockets. And just, applying things where it's like, yeah, quick stash. You grab a very cheap and terrible mustache and apply it to your face, and you have a minor bonus on any NPCs who are unfamiliar with you to pretend not to be somebody that just walked past them. Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. The intent was to stay silly, but also allow for just abilities to do whatever. Like, one of the theatrics abilities called come up with something, because improvisation is a huge part of the tabletop scene. So I was like, all right, well, I will let you use theatrics in place of a deviousness check to cover up a lie with the ability come up with something.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so, yeah, random stuff.
I do feel personally attacked looking at the theatrics. I do feel personally attacked by this vocal warm-ups, as if that's what theater kids do. Like,
yeah.
How dare you?
You perform
Never.
a series of distracting chants and throat clearing loudly. Anyone within average distance who's attempting to focus on magic must defend against your charisma to maintain their focus. And how many of us have listened to that one 10-minute vocal warm-up academy guy for any time that we're ready to record? Because I know I do.
What?
We are starting with the hum.
Oh my god! I was like, certainly not anybody else knows that one.
I don't.
Jacobs? Oh,
Not
yeah.
that yet.
No. Yeah, it's so many of us use it. So yeah, I do that one all the time. And it is, I thought about that and I'm like, God, how distracting must this be to my spouse sitting on the bed across the room as I'm doing these warm-ups? And I went, that would break someone's spell concentration if it was annoying enough. And, like, leave it to a theatrics character to be like, I can amp the annoying up to 11.
Oh, man.
That was the inspiration behind that, yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, it's making the weirdness you want to see in the gaming space and finding a way to make it as functional as possible while acknowledging, like, it's a mountain to sift through.
Yeah. Do you have anybody else kind of assisting you in this?
I bounce ideas off my spouse all the time, but beyond that, I've been writing this myself.
Sheesh. Okay, so like we just did a bit of a play test to understand it.
Yes.
Where are you in the I guess the process of creating this thing at this point?
I'm actively playtesting the mechanics to see what needs editing before I do the world building and the fleshing out of the monster manual, because all of that needs to be incorporated as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have something like 40 rough enemies at different levels that people could go against. I have no pre-written dungeons. That's all just kind of riffed as I go beyond it. But effectively, the mechanics of almost everything except for, like, customizing your character's vehicles are written. You can customize magic items up to almost legendary status and build them with a point-buy system, much like you'd build your characters. The weapon becomes in itself a character type. The mechanics on how you'd craft it are all fleshed out, so a character with a high enough craft score could spend several days in-game making a suit of armor that would be custom. And all of this is written out. The lore is The last part, I think, because once it gets into the heavy world building, that's when I'll have the most fun.
Mm-hmm.
But mechanics, it's a long form playtest is the next step to see if I've got the numbers balanced well enough to run a game. So I have 4 people who've said a tentative yes to 3 to 5 sessions this summer that will be streaming, and I'll be hopefully running it with them, and they'll be able to level up their characters between sessions to show character advancement and test a lot of the fiddlier bits before it gets to like group playtests where I send out copies of the, you know, Word doc at this point.
It's been fun. I don't know. Because I've played so many games, I felt like, oh, I get it once I was just kind of like shown where the tree of movement goes, where it's like, oh, I start here for the for my main die at my tier, and then I go into my attributes, and then I go into my skills. Like
Yeah.
following that easy. When you first show somebody D&D, they're like, all right, it's in your skills. Like, where's the skills? So you see a bunch of boxes, you don't know what the hell you're looking at in general.
Yeah.
So like I understand that it just takes some time. So I think it's good, especially since my brother who played with us doesn't play too many TTRPGs at all. So
Oh,
like
nice.
him coming in and getting a bit better flow of it shows that like, okay, the explanations had sufficed enough for me to kind of understand what the heck I'm doing.
Yep. And tier is effectively your character level, but it represents by a die. So instead of a proficiency bonus, it's a D4 at creation. You can up it to a D6 for half of your customization points. But it's, changing a D4 to a D6 that you'll use throughout the rest of the game until you up it from there. So and it's used in every role, which is why it carries a lot of weight. So yeah, and then you pick an attribute based on your approach. If you are using a skill, there is a static bonus if you have a certain amount of skill points in it. But otherwise, to use a die off of the skill, you have to put in effort, which means you're burning your character's stamina, which is a resource that will only refresh, at the end of the session or when you're resting. Yeah.
I like
So
that
yeah,
idea where it's like there's been so many times where like, okay, I don't have enough spell points or abilities, things that I haven't refreshed, and I'm not going to be able to rest. Also, the opposite effect where like I haven't used any of that because I was afraid that I would need it later. The session part is saying like, okay, I know essentially I have 2 to 3 to 5 hours, whatever I'm playing, to spend this many points. And it could be more if we decide to rest, but still like I feel like that changes the game on doing the cool thing while you're at the table.
And there's another thing that we didn't get to because it's more long form, but if you see at the stamina box, underneath it there's fatigued and exhausted. If you burn your stamina down to 0 but need to use more, you tick one of those boxes with an X, and then you refresh up to half rounded down of your pool, and that means you'll take a D6 penalty on everything that you do when you're fatigued. But you can still keep pushing through, and then exhausted is a 2d6 penalty. I'm thinking of skewing that differently because that might be too severe to be 1 against, then 2 against, so minus a d4, then minus a d6. Because technically vitality damage will do that as well. So, like, in theory, a character who's burned through all of their pool and their vitality could have 4d6 against every pooled roll, and that would suck. But instead, that would just be a d10 against everything. And, like, does that still suck? Yes, but it sucks incrementally less. And that's the goal. So I'm still testing how I want to treat certain things. But yeah, you can burn through your stamina pool into exhaustion. And it's for those moments where your character's giving their last breath and, going all out. And those are fun character moments. I think I've never had a great session where I haven't been down to the wire. Like, the really good experiences where you go, that session was intense, everyone should be, like, burned out of their resources.
Exhausted, fatigue, all of it, just bing, bang, boom. I'm just, like, because, like, in the games that I've seen, like, showing that fatigue is usually just, you just get penalties. There's no, like, oh, because you did something stupid by not resting, or you did something or you weren't allowed to. This is just like, I want to push my character. This is a different feel from like the environment and the dungeon master is doing something to me is I am doing something to provide something for my team.
Yep. And remember, when you're out of stamina, a basic attack without using your skill die still costs nothing. So you could continue light swinging. You're just not putting any exertion behind it. So you're not out of options. They're just weaker options compared to what you could do if you went all out.
Yeah.
So it incentivizes you to like push yourself to the limits.
Right. Yeah, you have more agency over what's going on. I'm gonna do a fresh restart in my head. There's too many ideas in my head.
That's fair.
I was gonna ask, hey, what are you thinking, Alex? Hey, how was character creation for you, Alex? Too many, just a bunch of questions inside of there.
I could talk about character creation because honestly, I came to the session without anything. So, like, as much as I would love to say, yes, I was prepared and I didn't read through shit. And that was nothing against not wanting to do it. It was just, I'm gonna claim the teacher card right now, and like it had been pushed, but we had pushed back this recording a couple of times, and so was it on the front of my mind? Absolutely not. Did Adrian have to text me and say, "Hey, are you doing this thing?" Yes, and I really felt that even in the short amount of time that I took to read, like I didn't feel completely lost. Right? It was like if you. Looking at the, like, 5E rules in setting up a character, sometimes I feel a little lost. It's just a lot to think about. It's a lot of other things, and it's not like they go in order. It jumps around, and you're like, okay, I'm adding 2 points here because of this, but then I've got to go back here and add 3 more points here. Like, it's a lot. But I really like the creation that it is like, okay, you're going to figure out with your character your 3 ability score types. Like, let's go here. Are you going to be a more physical, mental, or social character? And then starting there, okay, well, that makes a little more sense. And then you're going to continue on through the journey. I think there was only one part that reading the primer that you sent us, there's only one part that what was being said was different than what I was reading, and that may have just been my reading. I don't know where it is.
It's entirely possible it's my writing.
I
will accept responsibility.
I mean, either way. But it was something that was like, oh no, you're just doing this, and okay, cool. I think it was the points for something. I don't know, looking at the character sheet.
It might have been like trait points and then techniques, because those areas are...
The techniques was my area, because then I went and looked at my notes, and I wrote down 10 points, and I wrote 10, and then had traits and techniques close together, so I just assumed that the 10 was by techniques and not traits, even though I did traits correctly.
Oh, okay.
I think it was my tertiary skills. That was the only part that I was like, how many total points do I need in the tertiary skills? Like,
right. It should just be 3, I think. Yes.
Yeah. So
or
that was the only part that I felt frustrated in. Like, or not, and I wouldn't even say frustrated. It was just what I was reading, and then like the logical sense, because right in the mind, magic, body balance, charm, confidence, though that section, when you're like, okay, it's 6, 4, then if we're following logic, it's 2, right? So like I could figure out that, but
yeah, the 6, 4, 3 compared to that does, yeah. So with attributes, 2 in attributes would just be like 2 d4s, and you'd just be the lowest you could get in one. And so yeah, it does balance out. You put your primary will have 6 points aggregated between the top one and the bottom one, because there's 6 attributes. 2 are physical, 2 are mental, 2 are social, and you've got a primary, secondary, and tertiary. And yeah, it is add 4 points to the primary, add 2 points to the secondary, and then only add 1 point to the tertiary. So Yeah, it is like 4, 2, 1 compared to the skills one, which was 9, 6, and 3. I do have, and it's something that I'm probably going to be removing and swapping out, but it was that you'd get 2 bonus skill points in cultural skills that are associated with your character's culture, which is why there's a spot for that in the sheet. But because we're just doing playtesting and one-shots, and it doesn't matter if someone is from, the engineering lineage or from the farming lineage, it doesn't make a huge difference storyline-wise. So I've just been skipping those, and that's where 2 more points would drop in, and they're like 1 in one, 1 in another, and that would kind of balance it a little. But I realized putting things like that creates the inherent urge to min-max, and I don't really want people to feel that they need to pick a group just to have the right bonuses. So I may just have it be, and add 1 point to any skill that you don't have yet. Or something. But yeah, you're right. There is a difference between what you put in your attributes compared to what you put in your skills.
And that's it. And it's the numbers. And I have dyscalculia, so numbers and I are not friends anyways. So if that's my one complaint, and that's me reading it, which is not ever the way that it's actually played. So character creation, pretty lengthy. I will not say it's a short process.
There's just lots to read.
That's it. It's just a lot to read.
No big
because
deal.
you're spoiled for choices. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, you want less choices? Just close your eyes. And just go bam, like
just
smack your
choose
finger
the
onto
first
the
5
computer
you
screen
see.
and just pick.
Yep. There are 270 techniques that you get to pick from.
Yeah, go to Google random number generator 1 through 272. Okay. You have to make sure it's not tier 3, otherwise you have to build up. But that could help you figure out what you want.
True.
That's how I did it. I was like, I want these. Oh, there's a tier 3. Then I can build from there. And I'm like, oh, there's 2 that are, or there's a tier 2 that I wanted that was in the same thing. Did that. Easy.
Yeah, that is also how I did that with the techniques.
Honestly, it's the way to do it. The higher level ones are more fun, so you just pick one really good one that you like, and then a couple of light things.
There's something between my teeth and my gums that was just sitting right here in my chin. Oh my god!
Been there.
Finally got it. I was like, people in the video section are just gonna watch me like licking my lips a lot during this interview.
Oh no.
Anyways,
No,
I got it. It's gone. So
yeah, what did you think of the call and response style of combat where you make an attack and the enemy has to provide how they're reacting to it?
I think it gives you, the player, more agency as well.
True.
In that sense. Because, like, I was never hit, but I remember that Mason he had an option, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He could either block or dodge, and he made a very dodgy character. And it depends, because, like, in the event that the enemies were using ranged attacks are harder to block because you need a shield. Mostly because the idea of parrying an arrow with a sword is just silly. And
That's
reserved
ridiculous.
Yeah. I've tried. It doesn't work well. But then when it comes to dodging, like, you have a better odds of getting out of the way of it than you do of blocking it. And his character was built to be very mobile. The dilemma is the technique that he chose to use was one that adds time to the tracker and doesn't take away time. So it cost him more time than everyone else did, because your short bow moves faster than, a medium-sized sword. So it's just how I balance things out. But different weapons have different speeds associated with them, so that someone who's using a light weapon will strike more often than someone who's using a great maul. And you just have to determine what's your approach.
I have a very, very serious question to ask. How do you find love online?
It found me. My spouse picked me and just said, mine. And I went, yeah, that's cool. But no, I guess what had happened was we'd been amusingly, Sadie and I found each other on TikTok. We'd been following each other for a bit and interacting a little bit. And then the very condensed version is I was on vacation driving from Cleveland back to Chicago and following a musician on 3 legs of his tour. So it was Cleveland, Ann Arbor, Chicago. And then I was exhausted after the Ann Arbor show, and it was 11 at night. And so I realized driving all the way back to Chicago, I probably wouldn't make it. And she was finishing up, she'd gone back to school to do her master's, and she was finishing up a research project that needed her to turn in something by first thing in the morning, and it needed a lot of work. So she needed a co-working buddy to keep her awake. And so we spent 5 hours on the phone and realized that, like, while we'd been social and friendly, there was chemistry. And at the end of the phone call, she basically, like, went, yeah, I think I'm keeping you. And I went, I'm okay with that. And that was about as complicated as it needed to be.
So you're telling me I need to go to
It's so
Chicago,
cute.
Ann Arbor, and then go
Yes.
home.
Yes. You must be on a separate side quest, and love will sneak attack you.
All right. I mean, that sounds about right for the most part. Like, you're not expecting. I mean, from in the past, it's like I'm not trying, but when I try, it's like not happening. It is just the weirdest things. Anyways, we had this conversation with Sadie as well, and also.
Oh, okay.
That's why I wanted to bring it up
Got it.
in the Sadie episode. Yeah. Also, we talked about finding a mini. Like a Zine TTRPG of like matchmaking or something. I don't know. Haven't
that's a
looked
good
into
idea.
it.
Yeah. But yeah, I was going to ask, how did our answers line up?
We didn't hear that story,
Oh, okay.
but
No,
we did
I don't think
hear.
we got the story.
But we did hear that she was the initiator.
Yes.
Sadie, yes.
She called dibs.
She called dibs, and you said fine, no dibs back, or kind of dibs back. I don't know. I don't know how dibs works anymore. I'm too old now. I've hit 30. It's all over now.
I just agreed. Yep.
Yeah. And we talked about the wedding. That there was a game that didn't get pushed out in time. There was dice rolled at the ceremony, and I said I knew you guys were a thing because you guys went to the sacred Chicago rat hole together.
Yes, and she crit me on my own wedding. Did she mention that part? Because
So I just
Yeah,
the minutia kind of lost in the sauce.
we rolled initiative for who told vows first, or who did vows first, and she got an at 20 on dice that I had commissioned for her. And I got just a random die and rolled a 13. So
Still pretty
I'll
good.
take it. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Cute.
Yeah, and she just looked gorgeous. Like, the dress was spectacular. Someone that I've known for more than half my life made black scale mail shoulder pieces and that attach on a brooch necklace bit. It's just so cool.
Nice. And
Actually, you can kind of see them right there.
zoom
That
in,
is from-
enhance.
It's my background on my phone, so let me grab a screenshot of that and then I'll zoom in.
No worries. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I think Alex was trying to check it out closer.
Yeah, but yeah,
Oh my god, it's so cute.
dragon scale shoulders, they were amazing.
That is pretty good. But yeah, and we'll see you in Gen Con. I'm excited. We gotta plan so much. You know the question we didn't ask? How did you get into TTRPGs? Like, how did you get into the hobby originally?
No, that's fair. That's a good
That's
question.
the baseline question. But you just jumped into the minutia.
I had an original Nintendo back when they were new, because I'm that old. And Dragon Warrior was a game that I played, which was my first encounter with an RPG to begin with. So it had hit points, it had levels up, it had spells, it had armor and swords and weapons and stuff, and all those details. And I got really stuck on the idea of this is cool. And then fast forward a while later, a buddy of mine recommends that we play 3rd edition as it came out. So this was the year 2000. I was just starting high school, and I started playing with that group for like 2 sessions, and then it fell through after I'd bought all the books. So then I just started running it with another group of people that were playing consistently, and I was the guy that just ran it in my high school's lunches and like our study halls. So I ran games all through high school. I bought Beyond D&D. I picked up Rifts, but never ran it because it was so hard to understand for a 16-year-old. And then I picked up the original Baldur's Gate on PC, and that's where I learned that AD&D rules were way more complicated when it came to calculating AC. And then from there it was college, and 3.5 came out, and so I rebought all of the books. But then started playing things like GURPS, Hero, Exalted, Paranoia XP had come out. All of these weird different variations, and I just got hooked on the Beggartalk universe. And from there, it's been, collecting, playing, and running. I've taken 3 campaigns from level 1 to completion, and played 4 that have gone from beginning to a successful end of a story. And like dozens more that didn't, but that's how it always goes.
Truly, truly. You start off with such high hopes, and then it just fizzles.
Mm-hmm. And like any Forever GM, my characters have gotten more and more unhinged. In a Star Wars campaign, I was a heavily modified gonk droid. So I was a walking refrigerator that had most of the internal battery taken out, and it was replaced by mechanics tools. I was the ship's mechanic, and I opened like Pac-Man, and you just saw these little crab arms with tools attached to them go into the ship to fix stuff. I had the slowest possible walking speed because it's literally just like, that's as fast as the gonk goes. It's little step by little step. Yep.
Gonk is just like that legs and the cubular torso, right? That's looks like
a walking mini fridge.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's like a trash can looking.
Oh yeah, and I was the multi-services technician 3000, also called MST3K.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, had to be a reference.
Had to be a reference.
But I also have the only kill by turbo lift because I hacked the ship, a starship's computer, and shot. I took out the gravity, and then a stormtrooper was floating down the turbo lift because I disabled the turbo lifts, and so I reactivated the turbo lift and put it to maximum speed to the ceiling. So I rail cannoned a stormtrooper with a turbo lift, which I think is the best kill that I pulled off in that game.
Nice.
I got a dark side point. I thought it was worth it.
Yeah, that's going on the wall.
Achievement unlocked. Yeah. Homebrew rail cannon.
So good.
That's
I want to play that again. Some Star Wars. It's been a minute, but here I am, too busy to do anything.
Fair. Well, I want to run Fabula Ultima or Beacon, which are JRPG-inspired tabletop games that I've picked up, and they're both brilliant. But, yeah.
I got the chance, I had the opportunity to play Fabula Ultima for a one-shot, but then I checked my schedule, and I'm like, I double booked, and this was the second one, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I cannot play with y'all. But I have a character made for Fabula Ultima.
Nice. It is so good. Ema, the creator, is so active in their Discord, and they answer everybody on the Reddit. It's amazing. Just like the amount of care someone puts into a game that they put this much effort into. They deserve only good things.
Oh, for sure. That's how you know their whole heart is in it, when they're just answering every single question and answer and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you looking at me like that, Alex?
Because I know you wanted to say a different word.
I did want to say a different word, and I stopped myself. It's because of the kids, okay? It's because of the kids.
You don't have to tell me twice, because I thought it too. I filled in that sentence just like you did.
Yep.
My autofill said something different.
Somebody was swearing in their head. Yep.
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 It's a little
Yep.
ringing in my ears. What is your what was your first character that you created?
I had to make a cleric because they needed a healer. And I was the last person to join the table. And so I had a half-elf cleric in 3.0, and I didn't know enough about fantasy lore to know that when I rolled my age and I was in my 80s, that my character wasn't also in his 80s. So I was role-playing this probably lower middle-aged character as if he was such an old man. And it did not go over well. The other guys were not amused by it. But yeah, I don't even remember the name because I was at early teens.
Yeah.
So
It was one of those things where like you're told to do, so it's like, whatever.
yeah, exactly. It's 24 years ago. We only played once. It was weird. They were all of the stereotypes you'd get about freshman in high school D&D player boys with no girls at the table.
Damn.
And it made me
Yuck.
uncomfortable, and that's where I learned I was cut from a different cloth than the average dude. I'm nerdy, but I'm respectful and polite. It's a thing.
It's a different feel when you find out like, hey, maybe I'm a little different than everybody else.
Yeah.
Not the worst thing though. It's a good thing that you that's how it came out. You know,
fair. Being a non-toxic tabletop player is, a virtue and a goal.
Yes.
Yep. Especially with just as much mess as there is out there. But I'm just hoping that everybody finds a table that fulfills their needs safely.
Oh yes, for sure, 100%. I think early on in the when I started like looking at other people to like play at my table, I never really thought about being safe, because I was just like I was just a very thoughtful person already. And then they're like, hey, are you like LGBTQ friendly? And I'm like, wait, people are being not LGBT friendly out there? Like, I didn't know that was an issue.
Right? Yeah, like I grew up and my hometown had a very strong LGBTQ population. My high school had a GLAD program. So like you just, it was one of those things where because of the exposure to it, you all just kind of were like, no, this is normal. Like this is just Steve. Like Steve's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, yeah, this is what we grew up with. And I think that's one of the things where like people who fear it, people who are phobic, people who are hostile, it's a lack of exposure, experience, and understanding. And they you fear the unknown. And it's unfortunately tied in with a lot of like evolutionary psychology, but at the same time, like you can break those habits by just getting out of a comfort zone.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Exposure therapy.
Exactly.
You can't.
What? It's like
mean,
it's like, well, because like people get afraid of like bugs, so you start small. Like, hey, have a conversation.
No, I
shake
know.
a hand.
I know what you. I just took it to the. I took
You're
it
like,
to a degree.
just like what's it called, the religious camps? Is that what you're thinking?
No. I was just. Do you remember those Febreze commercials?
You gotta.
Where the person goes into a room and it's just like filled with trash, but they're like blindfolded, but they're like, it smells so good. So that's where my brain went. But rather than trash, it was just like gay people, right? So they're just being blindfolded and like carried in this room, and they're like, oh, this sounds like a pleasant party. And then they take off their rainbow blindfold, and then it's just like rainbows and just gay people. It's just a pride event. So that's why I
That's okay.
snorted.
Okay.
I'm sorry that you had to look inside my brain for that one.
No, that's okay. Most phobias and traditional psychotherapy, it's systematic desensitization. So yeah, you talk about it, you see an image about it, you meet someone from a distance, you gradually encounter. And I'm thinking like people who are afraid of dogs, like here's a picture of a poodle. Well, that looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a Muppet. Or, and then here's a small dog in the room. Well, it's on a leash. It's safe. And then pet the puppy. Oh, okay, I'll pet the puppy. Like, but yeah, there's different approaches,
Yeah.
I suppose. Deep end is, I suppose
The
a method.
Febreze commercial.
Yes. The Febreze commercial method of becoming more open and accepting.
All right, we've hit the hour mark.
Yes, we have.
I have to go to work, but let us wrap up while you know. Oh, tell them where you can find it. Tell them where they can
Yes.
find you. Ugh.
Yes. So, Dylan Baird, I am Bardic Geek on most forms of media. You can find my TikTok or my Twitch where I play JRPGs and will apparently this summer be running that 3 to 5 shot with 4 people. But it's BARDICGEEK. And yeah, I can be found most places. I don't really use Twitter because why? Twitch, I will stream once my voice is back because I just got over COVID, and then TikTok, I'm always trolling, so you'll find me there.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, dear listener. You can find us wherever pods are cast, so be sure to rate us 5 stars and 5 stars only because that's the kindly thing to do. Otherwise, we're just going to find your middle school journal and then start reading that slowly out loud so everybody knows all of your inner darkest secrets. But if you rate us 5 stars, then that won't even be a threat. You'll just get our undying love, and you can share us with your friends, families, and enemies. You can also find us on all social medias at Dungeon N, the letter N, Degrees with an S at the end of it. You can reach out to us. You can bother us in any of those formats. You could just Google us. It's easy these days. So, thanks. Thanks for listening. Oh, look! Somebody just followed us on Twitter.
Whoa.
Wow.
Might have been me.
It was so easy.
That quick.
That could be you, fellow listener. You can do that right now. Thank you so much for listening. My name's Adrian.
And I'm Alex.
And I'm Dylan.
Go have some fun.
Boo-doo-boo.